Hey nerds! I've got a Halloween episode. Look at me recording in a timely manner. For once. No, I used to be somewhat regular. Alright, well, I don't have. Normally I try to do personal updates at the beginning, but I don't really have any of that right now because I just recorded only but 2 weeks-ish ago. So, basically what I've got going on is all the same shit. I'm still approaching my graduation with my master's degree. I still don't have a job. So this video is sponsored by me, myself. And if you want to go to Patreon, where the Streetlights end, or back AlleyAlchemist, I think either will send you to the right place. You can join, and you can join for free. And then if you can also pay $1 or any number of dollars, and you can get extra stuff. I've been trying to post updates, ask questions, polls, videos, what have you, to make it interesting. So there's that. Or you could go to my Etsy shop and you can buy one of the cool witchy things that I made, or, whatever. You can just be here and that helps. I believe that if I just kind of keep doing it and keep doing a good job, then eventually my people will find me and they will care about what I do enough for me to not die. We're hoping anyway. There's still hoping. Well, that's all I got. That's all my personal updates. My dog was prescribed, my girl dog, the one that I've only had for a year, was prescribed doggy Percocet because she's so anxious that she's gonna die, pretty much. I have high hopes. We're training, we're working on it, but with a threshold to where she freaks out being so low. Like, you stand up a little bit fast and she's like, it's really hard to train her because there's no window there for me to teach her what I want her to do at these times. So we're hoping that the meds will help a little bit. That's the biggest thing going on for me right now, other than schoolwork and trying desperately to obtain dollar bills. Let me think. There was another thing I was gonna say. What was it? Who fucking knows? I don't care. Do you want to learn about Ouija boards and talking to ghosts because it's Halloween and that's spooky? And look at this. If you're watching video, I have a little necklace with a planchette. I think it's cute. It was a Christmas gift. The chain broke though. Alright. I guess let's get into it. Happy Halloween. Samhain. Whatever you celebrate. I don't know why I did that. My hair looks ridiculous. Oh, why'd I do that? My hair's being goofy. Don't mind me. Ouija boards! So, I've been watching a bunch of movies about Ouija boards, and it's been a lot of fun. Most of them are super ridiculous. There was one from the 80s that I found on Amazon called Talking Board, and there was an asshole ghost who pretended to be the ghost of a little boy, and it tormented some chick and killed the cool medium with funky hair. That made me sad. Anyway, I grew up in a family that loved themselves a Ouija board. I remember being very young, and my mom and my sister, and my cousins, and my uncles, and I would all put our fingers on the quarter and try to talk to our ancestors, mostly my Grandpa Joe. I guess my mom lost the planchette, because we used a quarter. When my mom and my uncle would do it together without us kids, the quarter would start flying in circles around the board so hard and fast that it would scratch up the surface. It was really intense, actually. The way it's depicted in movies is nothing at all. Not even a little bit like how I've seen it in person. So seeing all of these movies recently made me wonder about the origins of talking boards in the first place, or of the Ouija board itself. And I wondered if there might be a wide variety of different beliefs and practices surrounding it that might account for why my experiences and the experience of others, or those portrayed in film, are all so different. Unfortunately, I did not find a whole lot about that. I didn't find a whole lot of history behind the idea of a talking board. There's a little bit, but not a whole lot. So that's a little disappointing. It's still interesting, though, I'd like to think. So first off, in case you don't know what a Ouija board is, it's a wooden board and the English alphabet is written across it from A to Z. And there's the words yes and no, the numbers 1 through 9 and 0, and the word goodbye across the bottom. They typically come with a planchette, which is a little thingy you're supposed to set your hands on, and it's got a glass or a see-through circle on it to highlight the letter or number that the planchette moves over onto. The lore states that you're supposed to use it to contact the other side. It's said that the spirits or ghosts of those who have died can communicate with you by guiding your hands across the board and spelling out what they want to say. Young gals sometimes pull it out during sleepovers and contact the spirits of the dead to ask if the boy in third period has a crush on them. The idea is that you can gain otherworldly insight because dead people, being in a state of existence between the worlds, have deep knowledge that can't be accessed by our pathetic, squishy human brains. We can ask them about the future, the past, or the thoughts and desires of others, etc. I suppose one could refer to it as a number of things: a method of divination, a method of mediumship, or just a goofy little game. So, according to Brock Silvers in the Taoist Manual, the book he wrote, the use of boards to communicate with the other world, or with spirits, has been mentioned as long ago as the year 1100 AD, found in historical documents from the Song dynasty in China. The method referred to in these sources is known as Fuji, which translates roughly to planchette writing, meaning that people would use a planchette, like those distributed with modern-day Ouija boards, to move across a series of characters in order to read out messages from the dead. This was supposedly a fairly common practice among people who communicated with spirits until it was forbidden by the Qing dynasty, which came into power in 1636. The modern Ouija board we all know and fear was invented in 1890 by some nerds named Elijah Bond, Charles Kender. I saw it written two different ways when I was researching. I think it was mostly Kender, though. I'll know later because after I realized that one way was right and the other wasn't, I started specifically only typing that one and apparently didn't go back and make sure that it was the same everywhere. So enjoy my sloppy writing. Charles Kender and Helen Peters Noseworthy. The story goes that Bond and Kender joined with a spiritualist and medium to do a seance. That medium was Helen Noseworthy, or Helen Peters. In February of 1891, the Ouija board was being advertised by a toy and novelty shop in Pennsylvania. The advertisements claimed that it was a magical device that could answer questions about the past, present, and future. The original Ouija board being sold back in the 1890s was pretty much the same as the ones you see today. I got most of my information from an article at Smithsonian Magazine.com, and who is the name of her? The name of the author of that article that I took so much of this information from is Linda Rodriguez McRobbie. So, I'm giving her credit for just basically giving me all of the information. Not all of it, but you know. Anyway, that's the article I'm largely referencing throughout this, just so you know. An historian named Robert Murch has been researching the origins of talking boards like the Ouija since 1992. He claims that when he first started trying to look into it, it seemed like no one knew a damned thing about it, which only made him more interested to find things out. And I hear that. I'm the same damned way. What he thought was strange was that it's an extremely well-known object in the United States, and there is a definite interest and fear of the thing throughout our culture here. By 1992, that one movie I mentioned earlier, Talking Board, had already been released, for example. It's difficult to believe that it was such a staple in American spiritualism, culture, and even media, and yet no one had ever bothered to research it to any extent at all. The Ouija board itself was the result of the New Age spiritualism movement that comes up in so many things that I talk about. In the 19th century, the United States saw a huge increase in an eclectic, cross-cultural spiritual belief system, right, among the populace. This meant that there were a whole lot of people at the time who believed very deeply that ghosts are able and willing to talk to us. This sort of spiritualism was already popular in Europe, apparently, but in the US, it came like a flood in the 1840s. Mediums and people claiming to have special spiritual powers became very popular and rather suddenly. The first big names mentioned in this article at the Smithsonian is the Fox sisters. I've heard a lot about them throughout my career as a spooky nerd, and I think they would make a good topic someday. But I'm not doing it now. I'm not talking about them much now. Just know that they exist, and they were mediums, and they were really popular in the 1800s. Anyway, when they got famous for their magical powers, spiritualism started to be mentioned in the national press. Millions of people started to hop on board, and a whole bunch of motherfuckers wanted to move things with their minds and talk to their dead aunties by the second half of the 1800s. You will learn more about this if you stick with me in this podcast, because like I said, this movement comes up in so many of the topics that I research. I probably don't even have to make a separate episode about the New Age spiritualism, because you'll know all about it eventually just from other subjects I discuss. I'm sliding away! I can't get comfortable. End me. Anyway, because of the prevalence of this belief system at the time, people didn't think it was weird at all to want to talk to ghosts. Kennard. Yeah, that's the word. That's his last name, Kennard, not Kenner. I knew it. The creators of the Ouija board started the Kennard Novelty Company. Burp. And with that and the board, they were latching onto this popular set of beliefs to generate themselves some capital. Dollar bills, y'all. The Ouija board was designed as a way for people trying to communicate with the dead to do so with a lot more speed and ease and accuracy than everyone had been accustomed to. People were having to go into a full trance to perform automatic writing, which is a fun subject, or wait for a pendulum to swing over the tops of letters, which is very hard to do with something that can only move in a circle or side to side. Or they would have to find someone of extreme spiritual power to pay lots of money to and have them channel a spirit. Making the board with the full alphabet and a clear yes and no on it made it way fucking easier to get a detailed message from beyond. Now, on the name, I used to call it the Luigi board, because I was a child and I didn't know French, but I knew the Mario Brothers, right? Anyway, there is a common belief that the name Ouija was given to the board because it's a combination of the French word for yes, oui, and the German ja. That's apparently not true. Murch, the historian who dedicated more effort into the research of this than anyone in his time, found out that it was actually Helen Peters Noseworthy who came up with the name. She's the medium I mentioned earlier, who is supposedly a part of the seance during which Bond and Kennard came up with the concept of the board. Helen claimed to be a powerful medium, but she was also Elijah Bond's sister-in-law, so they already knew her. She was in on it. The story goes that while they were sitting around the board doing the seance, Helen asked the board what they should call it, and it spelled out Ouija. Ouija. When they asked what that meant, the response that they got from the board was, good luck, which, did it mean that Ouija literally translates to good luck in the language of the ghosts? Or is that the fucking threat? Right? Helen says that she was wearing a locket at the time that had a picture of a woman in it, and the name Ouija, or Ouija, was above the woman's head in the photo. So that's probably got something more to do with it. Murch speculates that the woman in the locket was the women's rights activist named Ouida, and Ouija was just a misreading of her name. So getting a patent, right, on something like that? Well, it seems a little weird, right? The group needed to prove somehow that the board worked if they wanted to get their patent approved. So Helen and Elijah went to the patent office to file an application together, where the chief patent officer, this is a story told, this is how it goes, the story, the chief patent officer wanted them to demonstrate how the board was used. He wanted to see if the board could spell out his name, and then, if it did so correctly, he would allow the patent application to go through. This is how the story goes. Based on the descendants of these people, anyway. Apparently, they all sat down around the board, and it spelled out the name of the patent officer. It supposedly did. It did it. Cannot confirm if it was spirits of the dead who did so, or Elijah Bond, just because he already knew the guy's name because they worked together. And he might have pushed the damn thing. I guess Bond was a patent attorney. So I feel like he could have very easily known this dude's name. That was probably a thing. They got their patent, started manufacturing and distributing Ouija boards, and they became very, very fucking popular. They got extremely popular in the 1910s and 20s, likely due to the far-reaching traumas of World War I, when people were desperate for some hope that their loved ones were still somehow around, and that they could talk to them. Which is one thing that's really sad about people who were making money off of spiritualism back then. It's because people were, like, really missing their dead homies, right? Ouija boards have been blamed for a whole lot of weird shit since their inception over 130 years ago. For example, in 1921, the New York Times, I think there's a ghost in my kitchen. Something's knocking. It's probably the fridge. Anyway, in 1921, the New York Times printed an article which claimed that a woman in Chicago who had been institutionalized in a psychiatric hospital was telling the doctors that she was not, in fact, mad. She wasn't crazy. No mania at all, and they were totally wrong about that. In truth, Ouija spirits had told her, quite explicitly and in no uncertain terms, that she was supposed to leave her mom's corpse in the living room for 15 days and then bury her in the backyard. She was just doing what she was told, doctor. There are many, many cases like that. That one was just the most amusing of them to me that was in this Smithsonian article. Yeah, people were blaming Ouija boards and their communications with spirits that they had through the use of Ouija boards on a lot of things. There were some crimes and murders and stuff that people blamed on ghosts because of Ouija boards, which is goofy to me. It could be a testament to how occult beliefs and psychiatric problems kind of tie into each other a lot. And not even occult beliefs. People with psychological problems like schizophrenia and stuff tend to have spiritual delusions and hallucinations, whether it be Christian-based, occult, pagan, whatever, right? So those tend to go hand in hand just because our brains are like that. That's interesting. Anyway, in 1916, a woman named Pearl Curran, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, probably, Curran, started writing poems and stories that she claimed were told to her by a Ouija board. She said that she had made contact with the spirit of a woman named Patience Worth, who had died in England in the 17th century. Curran ended up being a rather successful writer. I would love to find and read some of her work. It's probably on the internet. I probably just have to Google it. I wonder if it was actually good, or if people were just buying into the hype because she said that the stories were told to her by ghosts. Either way, it's pretty interesting. I wonder if I could do that. Would you believe me? Did I ruin it by saying that I was considering it? And now you don't believe me? You won't believe me when I release my ghost book? You better believe me. Would I lie to you? In 1973, The Exorcist was released. Fucking classic. The Exorcist had a fucking profound impact on U.S. society. I can't even believe it, how often this movie comes up in these things that I learn about. Anyway, in The Exorcist, the poor possessed girl Reagan accidentally allowed a demon into her body by playing with a Ouija board by herself. You're not supposed to do it alone. It's a group activity. This had a serious impact on the way people felt about the Ouija board. It was kind of just a fun little thing before, and now people thought it was probably a gateway to hell. Which, to be fair, if we're talking about communicating with the dead, right? The veil exists. The concept of the veil is that there is some unseen barrier that exists between our physical perceivable dimension and the dimension of otherness, right? Where the spirits of the dead and the fae and all that cool shit lives. It's generally believed that our world and the other world exist simultaneously and at the same point in space. The only thing that separates us and keeps us from interacting with and honestly being bothered by the things on the other side is this veil, this barrier. For one to be able to bridge the divide between these worlds and consciously reach across to make contact with the entities who exist in that other dimension, one would have to create some sort of break in that veil. Now, it would stand to reason, if this were the truth of the universe, that those communicating with the dead through any means were in some way reaching through, across, or over that dividing force, which would mean that other entities that may not be what you're hoping to contact could take advantage of that opening and come through. Or if one doesn't control that opening perfectly, it could be a much larger gap or doorway than intended. Or perhaps if someone lacks the skill or knowledge required to properly close that door when they're finished using it, who knows what could come through it? Or if it would ever even close on its own at all, or if it would just stay open forever until someone found it and then closed it. So to me, if we are to accept the idea that people can indeed communicate with the souls of the dead, then it should be possible that forces may use the same methods to come to our side and do whatever they do. So, in a sense, I argue that a Ouija board, if it is being used and is functioning as intended, could indeed act as a sort of gateway to hell. A whole lot of people do indeed feel like Ouija boards are a portal to the other world. A very large percentage of people in the United States don't really believe in the other dimension as being how I described it, right? They don't believe that it's just a dimension or simultaneously existing world of land made out of energy and full of energy things, right? The world of the fae, or as being a harmless counterbalance to our version of the universe even. A lot of people believe that anything with spirits in it that is not our earthly realm is just hell, right? Or maybe purgatory or heaven. People tend to believe in hell instead of the whole other dimension thing. So if it's a portal to another dimension, and you are one of the people who doesn't believe in the other dimension as I described it, but do believe in hell, then obviously it's a portal to fucking hell. Right? I think I explained that well. I hope I didn't talk in circles too much. It's still really fucking popular, though. In 1967, Ouija boards overtook Monopoly as the most popular and best-selling board game in the United States. People love this thing. All right, now let's burst some bubbles. Kind of. It doesn't burst my bubble belch entirely, but it's a little bit bubble bursty. Scientists, those filthy hopes and dreams ruiners, say that Ouija boards are not in fact powered by spirits and demons. Evidence shows that when we use a Ouija board, we're the ones moving it, and even if we aren't doing it on purpose, or if we don't know that we're doing it, it's still us and not ghosts. Stick with me here, though. This is something called the ideomotor effect. The ideomotor effect is a term used to describe automatic muscular movements that take place in the human body without the conscious intention of the individual. Examples of this are twitching, tearing up when we're sad, jumping when we're startled. I do that one. I have an exaggerated startle response. Those are examples of ideomotor functions. The ideomotor effect, anyway. So it has been noted that voluntary actions are guided by the ideomotor and the common coding principles, which I don't know a lot about. The theory claims that performing an action results in a bidirectional association between the action's motor code in the brain and the sensory effects of that action produces. To quote this article, beep beep, my watch again. To quote this article, perceiving an action effect involves the same representation as performing the associated action, and conversely, performing an action involves the same representations as perceiving the associated effect. So it's our bodies and our brains fucking with us, right? This idea is referred to as action effect anticipation, by which I mean by perceiving that a thing is happening with our bodies, it sort of makes it happen more and makes other associated body things happen. So when we expect the planchette to move, our body makes it happen without our consent. Then we perceive that it's happening, and our body makes it continue happening. I guess. If I'm reading this right. There's a bunch of jargon in this source from the Journal of Neuroscience and Biobehavioral Reviews. Link will be in the description. Or at least a source that you can search. Just in case I'm misunderstanding that. The first report on the ideomotor effect was published in 1852 by physician and physiologist William Benjamin Carpenter. Shortly after this study was published, other scientists started to draw strong conclusions about many of the practices included in the spiritualist movement. Other examples of spiritualism type things that are fun, and it's upsetting when they're shitted on, but they are also easily and very well explained by this ideomotor effect, are pendulums, dowsing rods, automatic writing, and smaller acts of what seem to be telekinesis. This principle of non-conscious movement explains how these very small light objects can be moved a great deal by tiny, imperceptible physical movements by the user. Just the smallest twitch of the finger can move a planchette weirdly far because they weigh almost nothing. Does that make sense? On a personal note, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense with the quarters that my family traditionally uses with a Ouija board, especially with the ridged edges they have. Tiny, imperceptible finger twitches wouldn't typically be strong enough to get a quarter flying around like I've seen them do. One thing worth noting, especially with Ouija boards as opposed to spiritual tools used by single individuals, is that a Ouija is generally used by a small group of people. Here we have a group psychological component that helps explain what goes on. When people are in a group, all expecting the same sort of thing, a number of interesting brain shits goes on, right? Each individual in the group is influenced by the behaviors and physiological responses of one another, whether they be blatant or subtle. This means that if one person in a group psychs themselves out and they experience even a slight physical tremor as a response to that anxiety, the rest of the group picks up on that. Animals that exist in groups or packs are very good at this, and it's similar to the reason that yawning is contagious. One member of the group responding to an environmental stimulus indicates that everyone in that group is susceptible to whatever that stimulus is. One person yawns, it means that for some reason or another, they need to change their pattern of breathing. This means everyone should probably do it, because there might be something weird in the air, or it's time to wind down and get ready for bed. If one person gets spooked and starts trembling a little bit, the others will unconsciously pick up on that, and because their bodies are acting like something is wrong and that there's a reason to be scared, they will indeed begin to feel scared. This makes them all freak out. In this way, one person being a scaredy cat can create a full room of hysterical people totally losing their shit. And this happens a lot when people are doing Ouija sessions or seances, or like a group of teenagers is hanging out in the cemetery after dark because they think that they're edgy and one person's a little bit anxious and they weren't really comfortable with going there in the first place because they were going to get in trouble, and also they believe in ghosts, but everyone's acting like it's this fun, cool time, and so they get stressed out, and then they hear something. What was that? They hear something in the shrubs over there. Oh God. Is it a cop? Is it a ghost? Is it a coyote? And then everyone starts freaking out, and inevitably within like 15 minutes, the entire group of teenagers is running, fucking hauling straight ass down the road out of that cemetery. And they're gonna stand in a huddle on the side of the road after they get a couple blocks away going, "What the fuck was that? Oh man, that was so scary." That never happened to me. I was never involved in anything like that. I never did that. That wasn't me. It's the same thing, though. There was probably nothing. Maybe it was a raccoon. But there was definitely no reason for a group of 10 teenagers with swords to think that there was a demon chasing them. And it was because one person, not me, I'm very brave, spooked themselves with their anxiety, and everyone freaked out. This comes into play during seances and Ouija sessions. It becomes impossible to know. Oh, another thing. Because of a group, it becomes impossible to know if another person is moving the planchette, because the burden of responsibility is shared among multiple people. If one person is moving it on purpose and doesn't fess up, no one else is moving it, they feel it moving and know it admits to doing it, then if they trust each other, it must be being moved by someone other than the group of living people sitting around the board. Yeah? It's a ghost. Why would your friend lie to you like that? Why would they want to trick you? That's rude. That's not what friends do. It's not hilarious at all. Here's some neat, super nerdy psychology shit for you. According to Linda Rodriguez McRobbie, author of the main general source that I'm using for this story, at Smithsonian magazine, researchers at the University of British Columbia's Visual Cognition Lab think the board may be a good way to examine how the mind processes information on various levels. The idea that the mind has multiple levels of information processing is by no means a new one, although exactly what to call those levels remains up for debate. Conscious, unconscious, subconscious, preconscious, and zombie mind are all terms that have been or are currently used. My dog decided she needed to shake her head and her ears flapped really loud. I hope you didn't hear it. If you did hear it, now you know what it was. Dr. Ron Rensink, professor of psychology and computer science, psychology postdoctoral researcher Helen Gaucho, and Dr. Sidney Fells, professor of electrical and computer engineering, all joined forces to try to figure out exactly what goes on when a group uses a Ouija board. Professor Fells set out a Ouija board for his students at a Halloween party and left them alone to mess with it. He claims that when he returned hours later, the students were all were all still fucking about with the board and had gotten themselves all freaked out. I'm sorry, my dog is sniffing and huffing. What are you doing, Kali dog? Kali, can you fucking lay down? I hate her. I don't know why she has to be loud while I'm recording. Can you go lay down, Kali? I named her Kali after the Hindu goddess of destruction, but everyone pronounces her name Kali, and that's really, really different. That's a very different thing. Okay, now that she just hit her head on the desk. You're stinky. Sorry about the interruption. Dogs are important, and she's very cute. Let me think. Okay, so he left the Ouija board out for his students to play with, and he came back, and they were all still fucking with it, and they were all really freaked out. A few days later, the doctors started to discuss the board and what goes on with it in a deeper way, and they decided that the board offers an interesting way to tap into non-conscious knowledge, and it could be used to determine if the ideomotor effect is able to express what we know, but like we don't know that we know. So if there's something in our head, in our unconscious mind, something we're perhaps vaguely aware of, or we've picked up on subtle clues in our environment to let us know this, but our conscious mind hasn't put two and two together, and we don't know that we know that, it's possible that our bodies, the ideomotor effect, is going to react to those things despite us not knowing that we know the thing. Does that make sense? Which is exactly what I was going to say. When I was thinking about doing an episode on Ouija boards, I was thinking about what I think they do and how they do that. I can't stop burping. I had to delete my last sound recording and my last video recording because the dogs came out all riled up. They wanted attention. So I had to undo that, and now I started it again to redo it, and I burped. So this is just what you get. Okay. What I believe to be the case with Ouija boards and in most situations involving a talkie board anyway, and it reflects what I believe about a whole lot of spiritual tools and practices. I believe, and these science people also believe, meaning that they agree with me on this, that things like Ouija boards, pendulums, and most forms of divination as well, give us an avenue for our bodies to tell us what we already know. Things that our brain has perceived, but that we aren't aware of or aren't comprehending entirely, can be shown to us or told to us by how our bodies act. Ideomotor functions explain this in the same way that we can feel the hair on our arms stand up when there's a lot of static in the air. We aren't consciously aware of the fact that there is static in the air, but our bodies and brains sense it and react to it anyway. And our conscious mind has no effect on that at all. We don't decide to stick our arm hairs up, right? It seems as though when using a Ouija board, on some level that we can't actually conceptualize, we know the answers that we're seeking, or at least know what we want those answers to be, and our body is reacting to that without our conscious effort to do so. Dowsing rods and water witching are good examples too. It stands to reason that when someone is out there looking for water on a property, holding a fucking stick out in front of them, this ideomotor effect is taking place. Most likely our bodies are sensing where the highest concentration of moisture is around us. And it's not something that we can consciously pinpoint, but our body does feel that moisture somehow. And some deep, hidey hole part of our brain is processing that sense that's coming from our bodies. And then our bodies twitch and move in accordance with that against our conscious will and point us toward that source of moisture. That source of moisture. And in this way, we can use fucking magic to figure out where someone should dig their well. And I think that's fucking cool. Tell me, where does truly lie the line between science and magic? The bean sign mage. Where does lie the bean sign, Madge? I give up. I give up. Apparently I'm fucking goofy today. Where does lie the bean? Where does the truly bean lie? Where does the line truly lie between science and magic? Take me out back. Now hear me out. We gotta move along. We got it. The show must go on. Hear me out. I think that in a sense, this scientific explanation proves that there are crazy, imperceivable, weird things going on all around us all the time. I think that just because it makes sense from a scientific standpoint doesn't mean it isn't magical. The fact that our bodies are able to perceive such tiny, so small it cannot be measured, things in our environment and trigger our brains and the rest of our bodies to act upon it, even without us telling them to, I think that counts as being spiritually sensitive. Probably what makes the difference between those who actually practice spiritualism and everyone else is just literally practice. Like, if you believe that you have an extraordinary ability to sense things that cannot be seen, and you practice doing so, you are almost certainly training your body and your mind to do it more effectively and to be able to recognize when it's happening, and possibly even direct it with some level of intention. If the scientific explanation for how the Ouija board works then is true, then we all have some level of supernatural power. Even if it's not supernatural, it's still beyond the standard natural world that we perceive throughout our normal day-to-day. On the other hand, like many other methods of communication with forces unseen and things beyond the veil, it may go entirely into the concept of intention. Myself and many others raised in non-Abrahamic or pagan spiritual systems believe that the intention of the individual is what gives something power, whether that thing is an object like a wooden board, a handwritten note, a stone, a feather, or even an idea, a concept or a song, or a word, spoken or written. The intentions placed upon it by a person dictates what it does and what power it has. Probably, a Ouija board is just a slab of cardboard with some letters stamped on it, which is sold for about $20 at Walmart. Geez, probably like 50 now, huh? Inflation. And probably most people buy them as party favors for preteen slumber parties and Halloween. And they're just used as like a goofy little game. However, sometimes people probably do put that little bit of power called faith or belief into it, and they truly fully intend to use it to communicate with their grandmother and finally solve the ongoing war within the family concerning whether she used brown sugar or honey in those cookies she made every winter before she died of melanoma. And because of that belief and that intention, it's possible that the board does serve as a bridge between worlds, and maybe, yes, it was honey, and I'm gonna go tell my cousin once and for all that Grandma told me it was honey, and she's a stupid bitch and should have believed me. So basically what I'm getting at here is that there is a scientific explanation to how and why Ouija boards work, how and why water witching works, how pendulums work, even like other types of divination, tarot reading. I read tarot. I have a really cool moon magic deck. I believe that a lot of it is just a tool to help us understand and better conceptualize and put to words and put in action things that we already know, which could mean that there's no magic at all, or it could mean that we are magical entities and we have superpowers and we just need to figure out how to use them. And I choose to believe that because it's a lot more fun and it's Halloween, so how dare you argue with me? Anyway, that's my episode. I hope it was fun for you. I have not been able to talk. My mouth has not been doing the things that I have wanted it to do. And the dogs have been all hype. And they've been interrupting me. And I keep burping. And I can't get comfortable in my chair. Did you see me or hear me earlier when my chair just started rolling away? And I was just rolling away from my desk as if I was on a chair that had wheels. But I did my best. And I'm proud of myself. I've survived. I'm fucking giggly too. I don't know what my deal is. It's noon. It's noon o'clock. It's the middle of the day and I've got my Waterloo. I fucking hate it when I have to watch someone or listen to someone take a drink or a bite of something. I'm so sorry that I did that to you. Anyway, so this episode, like I said, is sponsored by me and myself and me spending a lot of my own free time just to do it because I love to do it and I want to talk to people about the cool things that I find interesting and decide to study for no reason at all. And that's why I'm here. If you would like to support my efforts, if you like what I do, if you want to help me continue to live inside, which is always kind of a threat for me, you are welcome to check out my Patreon page and see if there's any reason that you have that you might want to join that for $1 or more. Or you can join for free and you can see most of the stuff. I've been putting some stuff visible only to paid members just to incentivize giving me money. You know how it works. Capitalism. Or you could go to my Etsy shop, which I believe should be linked up in here. It should be AlleyAlchemist Crafts. Yeah. Oh, you want to see something I made? Last time I showed you guys a thing that I made and someone bought it because it was cute. I have... Oh, what's this one? This is a spell jar. This one is for abundance and prosperity. And it's got... What is that? Green jade, cinnamon, a scavenger feather, and a scroll. I sell these on my Etsy shop. I have other ones. I have one for love, don't use it for evil, and one for protection. That's all I got. I was going to show you the power rods I made, because they're really cool, but I'm not getting up and walking to the other side of the apartment just to show you that. So just trust me, it's cool as hell. Check out my Etsy page. That's it. Hopefully I'll come up with another one that I can do, and maybe I'll continue trying to upload every 2 weeks-ish. Who knows how difficult my next class will be? Probably not too bad. I love you.